Good evening, everybody. 30-year-old Paige Renkoski was last seen on Thursday. Her car found on I-96 with the motor running and her purse and shoes inside.
Over 30 years of questions and silence. Paige Renkoski missing without a trace.
My gut feeling tells me that someone forced her off the road.
Now, a new beacon of hope emerges. A new documentary aims to take up the mantle, determined to uncover the truth.
Hysteria at different times. I mean, we all were on a roller coaster of emotion.
This is Missing Paige. It's a case that has remained cold for more than 30 years in mid-Michigan. Good afternoon, I'm Taylor Gattoni. We have been following the case of Paige Renkoski, who vanished from the side of I-96 near Fowlerville back in 1990. We start with some background on Paige Renkoski. When she was a young woman from the town of Okemos, working as a substitute teacher. On May 24, 1990, Renkoski vanished without a trace after she drove her mother to the Detroit Metropolitan Airport and visited a friend in Canton. She was 30 years old at the time. The only piece of evidence in her disappearance was a running car on I-96 near Fowlerville. Witnesses reported that she was seen on the side of the road, talking to a man next to a maroon van parked behind her car. Last November, Paige's youngest sister, Missy Renkoski Hollis, and her niece Nikki revisited the last place she was seen alive with a psychic. Investigators say they have followed every lead sent to the Livingston County Sheriff's Office. In the first part of the documentary, using different theories, Michigan State University journalists and filmmakers worked together to tell the story of how Paige's family is still searching for Paige 34 years later. Tonight, those students come together to continue the search for Paige Renkoski. After the break, we'll show you the first part of a documentary they call Missing Paige. Stay with us.
3, 2, 1. Oh, my, we're all diving for it. And she, look at the enthusiasm there, I'll tell you. Paige moved 4 steps to the right quickly. Now she's going back. Look at her. She's going back to her seat. Paige, where are you going? Going back to her seat. Paige, where are you going? Paige.
Good evening, everybody. 30-year-old Paige Renkoski was last seen on Thursday. Her car found on I-96 with the motor running and her purse and shoes inside.
Paige Marie Renkoski grew up in Lansing, Michigan, a vivacious high school cheerleader and model.
Someone, somewhere, must have seen something of what had happened on that stretch of highway.
Talking with 2 men between her car and a dark-colored minivan.
Police in Livingston County have now classified the disappearance of Paige Marie Renkoski as an abduction.
The billboards will be seen by about 400,000 people a day.
My gut feeling tells me that someone forced her off the road.
They just have to call because they just have to think exactly when they pass that area. Somebody has seen something.
And we can't even begin to imagine why she got out of that car.
I feel that I knew in the first year, you know, that she wasn't coming home.
That's Paige. That's Cheryl with Missy on there. My mother, my father.
My name is Missy Renkoski Hollis, and I am Paige's youngest sister. Paige is one of my sisters that we love and miss. She's been missing for 33 years, and many, many people, hundreds, thousands, miss her.
I was living in Chicago, and I got a call before I went into work that day and said, Paige has gone missing. They found the car on the side of the road. She didn't show up at the softball game she was supposed to go to with her boyfriend, and we don't know where she is.
Well, of course, I was living in Atlanta when Paige disappeared. So Paige was driving my mom's company car. So when the law enforcement realized it was my mom's car, they called the house, left a message, you know, on the machine. It said, "Hey, we have your car. We found it at the side of the freeway," but no one was home because my mom was visiting in Atlanta.
The initial 911 call for her vehicle was treated as an abandoned vehicle. The report was the vehicle was on the side of the road and the headlights were on and it was just sitting there. Our deputies responded, confirmed that there was no one in the vicinity, checked the gas stations and the motel at the Fowlerville Road exit. She wasn't there, so they came back, secured the vehicle, and it wasn't until the next day that we knew that Paige was missing.
So I went into work and basically started figuring out how I was going to, you know, get to Lansing and what we were going to do to get my mother and sister back. There were no flights available. My company I worked for, the owner, he had a private jet, and so they flew the jet to Indiana and picked me up, and we flew to Atlanta, got my mom and got Missy, and we flew to Lansing. Shortly thereafter, the police, you know, the detectives came and told us what they knew, and it was just shocking. It was like you were in a dream, not a good dream, a nightmare. And that dream lasted for several days.
Hysteria at different times. I mean, we all were on a roller coaster of emotion, lack of sleep, lack of understanding, trying to answer questions from, you know, media, law enforcement, and just trying to work as a family.
I lost several pounds in that first week. We weren't really, so much adrenaline, you didn't want to eat, you know, couldn't sleep, and we just tried to rack our brains on what can we do. There was no rule book. There was no one to call. All we could figure to do is start making some posters. It was very difficult because we didn't have computers. All we had was copy machines, typewriters, and pictures, actual photographs. So we went to Myers a lot and made typed up the poster and scotch taped her picture to the poster and then ran copies. Our mother was so distraught, and she didn't actually have a lot of faith in the media and thought they would turn it into something negative. So we kind of had to wait and give her some time to come to the acceptance of the situation and that the media could be our ally. And they were.
Paige Renkoski.
Paige Renkoski.
Paige Renkoski. Paige Marie Renkoski.
Paige Marie Renkoski.
If you can see or hear us, we love you, and we hope we find you soon.
The tips started rolling in pretty immediately. They activated the tip line through the Michigan State Police, and within a matter of a few months, over 600 tips came in. Literally hundreds of people, many in which we didn't even know. Once it hit the media that Paige was missing, they came to our house and we'd give them a stack of flyers. And they're like, I'm driving to Chicago. And they would stop at each exit, stores and gas stations and rest stops. Flyers were everywhere.
Of Paige Renkoski, a young woman who has been missing for quite some time. May God bring her back to her family and friends. Let us pray to the Lord. I felt early on that she wasn't coming home. No reason, just it's how I felt, in my heart. But then again, we thought, Paige, maybe she'll just show up and walk in the middle of 25 people being here and law enforcement and walk through the door, but that didn't happen.
You reach a point where there's nothing else you can really do, and you have to continue on. You can't have everyone stop their lives, which was a really difficult thing for me to go back to work. And even going back to work, I still felt kind of in a haze, of how do I focus on this task when there's something as important as your sister being gone.
It's really impacted my life since I started to learn about the case. My mom kind of shared a little bit more each year as I kind of grew up and, made sure that it was age appropriate and that it was for me to understand. I was about 13 years old when my mom told me all of the details, and to this day we still get more tips and things like that. So throughout those years of growing up, I would get more information that way too, and just be, you know, my curiosity was piqued, and I just wanted to help. When I was in college, I had written a paper about missing persons cases and protocols and things like that. And when I was doing my research, I had found Dr. Pauline Boss, who had kind of introduced that topic of what ambiguous loss means. And it's kind of just this unknown or stagnant state of grief that somebody goes through because, you know, if there are unknown factors to the case, there's no way to fully grieve the situation, and you're going back and forth through all of these different stages, and just have this big loss that kind of has a big question mark on top of it.
You wake up at night thinking, God, what didn't I do? Or what did the police miss? You know, something's missing out of this whole thing. It doesn't make much sense. The scenario that I laid out, the way these things happen, it doesn't make much sense at all.
He passed away in 1994. So, yeah, he had medical issues, but he was just heartbroken over Paige. And he didn't heal as well as some of us others in the family. It really took a toll on him.
Children who have experienced trauma exhibit all the exact characteristics of someone that experiences post-traumatic stress. And that means, like, the intensity of the experience is so strong, and it produces a physical reaction in the body, adrenaline surge, and then different events that happen after trigger that. I mean, death can be so many different things, but if your mom dies of old age, it's sad, and it's a little trauma, but if you lose a loved one to any kind of violence or lack of closure, the missing in action in wars, I mean, those are like huge traumas for anybody.
That's my biggest fear, is that she's still alive somewhere being held. And if she were ever to be set free, I would have a hard time thinking, sorry, I went on with my life, you know, and she was there, you know, so that would be hard to live with.
So we say this almost every day. Somebody out there knows what happened to Paige. And that gives us hope that there is somebody out there, and they will come forward one day, and then maybe we'll find out what happened to Paige. And we'll always look at Mom.
And this is 9 years after she disappeared. This is front page of the State Journal, 1999, May 25th.
So that was probably a media story for during her anniversary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Rara is here with us.
That's our mom.
This is her
grandma.
We call her Rara. My mom, our mom, your grandma. Her nickname was Rara. So this is our to-go urn. Shall we say a little travel Ra? We take her places that we go.
She came to Missing
in Michigan
yesterday.
And yeah, she fits in our purse and in the car, and people might think that's creepy, but we love it. You know, she loves it. She loved to travel.
Is there a point when you give up?
Oh, no, never.
She was a fireball, and she was just a very petite woman, but she never gave up.
My mom was a great leader in terms of being an advocate for other families of the missing. She did a lot on social media. She got really good with Facebook, which was impressive. I was proud of her.
She spoke to many groups and told Paige's story, and she also helped start the NamUs database.
We want her to know that we're going to find her, no matter what it takes.
And she also helped start Missing in Michigan. It's been now about 12 years that they've been doing it, and it's to bring together families of the missing across the state of Michigan. And it's just a strange thing to tell someone that you have a missing loved one, you know. So we get together every year at this event, and we're in a room just with a family, no other individuals, the missing families, and we know how each other feels. We've been through those, we've worn those shoes, and we've gone down that road.
And my mom was very helpful in the early years of getting this going, getting the whole program going. And our family's kind of you know, we've been around for a while doing this and trying to deal, and we're able to help other families. And some of their questions too with us is helpful for us.
Early on in Missing in Michigan, Artis became one of my confidants. She ended up being on my board of directors, and it was really hard for me to have Artis pass without having answers about her daughter.
They created an award in our mother's name, the Paige Renkoski Advocate Award. And so that was given out yesterday, and we were there to help present that award.
This year, the Paige Renkoski Advocacy Award goes to the MSP. MSU is in Michigan State University, cold case team.
My mom, I think, had so much faith and hope that it encouraged her to give that to others, even though that was not our situation. I mean, it made her feel good, and it kept her in a positive line to help others, even though we didn't have that ending.
Paige, if you can see or hear us, we love you, and we hope we find you soon.
This is the first part of the series called Missing Paige. Coming up, we sit down with the Michigan State University filmmakers behind the documentary on what they hope the documentary will accomplish. Stay with us. A documentary made by Michigan State University filmmakers on a woman who went missing more than 30 years ago in Fowlerville, Paige Renkoski. We now welcome in Dr. Jerry Zeldis with Michigan State University, Ethan Hunter. We have Jason Howard over here and Aiden Binford, and together you have all come together to create the piece behind us, Missing Paige, the documentary. So Ethan, we'll start with you. What did you learn in this process?
Well, yeah, starting out as just a junior in the Michigan State School of Journalism, you know, a lot of what we do is reporting and, you know, classic, just like we're doing here, you know, in journalism, like 90-second packages. Filmmaking is something that I really wanted to get into, and this being my first documentary, it's like a heavy subject to start off with. So this made me both a better reporter just in covering these tough subjects and interviewing, you know, people that are really emotional, and then editing that all together and learning to tell people's story in something that you weren't personally a part of, and, you know, an emotional way that can connect with other people. And there's a lot of weight to telling somebody's story that went through something like this when you yourself haven't. So it's been a lot of learning in that front, just as well as all of the, you know, journalism and filmmaking aspects of it.
You're taking those skills that you're learning as a student and you're talking about these sensitive topics. And so there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the documentary and watching it as well. Dr. Zeldis, why was this case chosen?
So I met Detective Sergeant Sarah Krebs through a family friend of ours, and she started talking about Missing in Michigan. She not only works at Michigan State Police, but she also has co-headed this organization. And I asked her, what's the most alluring missing Michigan person's case? And she said it is the Paige Renkoski case. And hey, listen, I can put you in touch with the family, and that's how it began.
Did they mention why?
So the circumstances around the disappearance of Paige was really eerie and odd. The car was found running, her shoes were in the passenger seat, and nobody knows where she was, especially given that it was I-96, close to the Fowlerville exit.
A major highway, many cars and traffic going down that route. And so Aiden, we'll turn to you. When it comes to finding that closure, finding missing Paige, What are the challenges that law enforcement is still facing?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that comes with handling cases like this, especially very old cases, is that there is a lack of DNA evidence. While we have Paige's car, and there were a couple of fingerprints that were able to be taken from the car, nothing was able to be conclusively done with those fingerprints. When you have DNA evidence, even though it was something that wasn't necessarily usable in 1990 without that necessary technology, today it is quite usable, and in fact the Livingston County Cold Case Team recently solved a case older than Paige's, a 40-year-old case, because they had DNA evidence. We have nothing in terms of DNA evidence for Paige, and so we can't figure out if there's either Paige's DNA or a possible perpetrator's DNA in the car or on any of the other evidence.
And so that is heavy in itself right there, and you talk about all the different tips and the technology that we have now and how that could have helped find Paige back in the day. And so after seeing the documentary, Jason, will now come to you, what message needs to be spread?
Yeah, the family really wants to spread the message that the pain doesn't go away. As long as they're missing, they will be staying with the pain. And there's thousands of families in Michigan with missing individuals, and to come together and to share their stories and try to get any more information they can on any of the cases.
You mentioned that there are more people missing in Michigan beyond Paige, and artist, Paige's mom, actually created Missing in Michigan, which does extend beyond Paige. Dr. Zeldis, will come to you. How is this helping the people in Michigan going forward with the technology that we now have?
Yeah, you know, it's shedding light. It's getting those stories out there using all the resources that you have available. So it's wonderful when we are able to share stories like this, because it provides an outlet, it provides a window and a light to the many other cases in Michigan that are unsolved. In any given day, and this is according to Sergeant Krebs, there are 3,300 people missing in Michigan. And those stories also need to be told.
Yes, share those stories, make their names heard, make their stories heard as well. And you are talking about her story, putting together, or you have this documentary to talk about her story. She went missing more than 30 years ago, before you were born. What significance does this have to you?
It's been, I mean, it's very significant. Like you were just saying, 3,300 missing people every day. Paige's story feels like something that, you know, when you think about it, maybe couldn't happen in today's age with phones and cell phones. You know, she would have a cell phone, somebody driving by would have a cell phone, would call in something that, you know, they wouldn't have to stop at an exit to call the police if they saw something wrong. But, you know, it absolutely is still happening. And it was tough to, you know, feel like, get ourselves in that time. And that's kind of why we started the documentary with all those, you know, all that old footage, just to like contextualize that, because you're right, as somebody that wasn't born in 1990, it was hard to get into, but you know, you realize that it's still a very pressing topic today.
A very pressing topic, and moving forward as students, how do you think this will help your work in sharing even more stories like more of the missing people in Michigan?
Well, I think one of the most valuable aspects of the story, and one that we really tried to touch on with this first part of the documentary, is that there is more to many of these missing persons cases than the true crime aspect. There's a lot of true crime that happens right now in a lot of documentaries, and it doesn't necessarily always touch on the fact that there is this grieving family that is trying to cope with the loss of a loved one, even 34 years on.
Dr. Zeldis, Ethan, Jason, and Aiden, thank you so much for joining and sharing your documentary, Missing Paige. That concludes our special report. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.